You know how they say, tonight at 11 AI, it's gonna put accountants out of work. That isn't really happening, but for one exception, accounts payable. Today, I'll show you in 4 steps how AI is automating genuinely like 80% of AP work. I last ran an accounting firm where we managed accounts payable for over 100 companies. What we're talking about today, frankly, it's an opportunity to make the AP department not only faster, but smarter. Because your accounting staff, there are so many better ways to use them to support your business than in mundane AP functions. We're gonna get hands-on. The tool you're gonna see throughout here, it's an AI accounts payable app called Makers Hub, who's kindly agreed to sponsor this walkthrough. But what I want you to see as someone who ran AP teams in loads of businesses is this is real. Like, this is a really cool application of AI that I think we can all get behind, because who really wants to fuss with AP stuff? Okay, let's get into it. So 4 steps to make your AP process both faster and smarter. We are talking complex approvals of bills, getting the right access for your team, even making it easy for them to do all this from the field, and payment approvals, which is a totally separate ball of wax to bill approvals. But let's start with step 1, which has made this entirely new approach to AP possible. It is using AI to extract and index the data from your bills. And when I say the data, I mean every bloody detail of an invoice. Item numbers, descriptions, job, unit prices, and importantly, how each of these items map to your accounting codes. And because every single vendor seems to like to invoice differently, I can customize how every detail on an invoice gets processed. For example, we got a salesperson here, Amy Zilka. Hi, Amy. Thank you, Amy. If we wanted every invoice from Pittsburgh Air here to be processed differently if Amy's the salesperson, we can tailor that on a vendor by vendor basis. And that is really what's changed. The fact that AI can now pull with incredible accuracy any old little fiddly detail on the invoice, which then dictates all your downstream workflows, like especially the approval processes, which is usually where the process breaks down. But this already, it is a tremendous time saver. We've shown in the past demos of how you could drop like a 100-page PDF into here, and it'll make sense of every little detail on every invoice, even reading handwritten text. Over a year ago, we demoed this and it kind of blew people's minds. It can read handwriting? But this is really important. The AI models making this happen have gotten so much better since then. And that's not stopping. That's just continuing to improve. So eliminating manual entry, that's great, a time saver. But the real opportunity to me is then how this granular detail can then fast track both bill approvals and payment approvals, which are 2 entirely separate things. So let's start with bill approvals. We'll hop over here into bill settings, and here's an example bill approval workflow. If we drill into here, look at all the items we can access to build custom workflows around: amount, vendor, item description, purchase order, customer, location. As much of a time saver as AI extraction is, not having to do the manual entry, I actually think streamlining the approval process, that's probably the greatest opportunity for most companies. Because your bill or payment approvals can be dependent on so many different factors, department, customer, the items, does it match the purchase order? Did they get associated to the right accounting codes? Because all that can get so hairy, a huge percentage of companies still do these awful like manual approval processes, even like in person on paper, which is now a nightmare as more people are working remotely, out in the field. It just doesn't work. So let me show you an actual example how this workflow is set up, because I think it'll give you some cool ideas. So what you're looking at here, this is saying if the bill is greater than 0, send it to the AP processors user group. Yes, that's them. Down to the next line, unless it's greater than 5,000, then send it to the AP processors, then have Charlie approve. And we've set this to happen sequentially. Only go to Charlie after the AP processors have signed up. Down to the next line, unless the vendor is Belimo, then just send it to Bruce. Now down here, these shaded boxes, they're conditional. So they're saying if the customer is any of these, then add Chris Pepper to the approvals. Or if the accounting class is East, send it to John because he's the office manager out East. So to look at an actual bill, I'll show you an example of this in action. Here's a bill that's been routed to Charlie and Chris. But I'm gonna hop in here, I'm gonna add East to this bill. Remember, we wanted office manager Joe to be added to any bills for the East office. Let's fill East down across the items. I'll just hit approve. It takes me to the next bill, but if I jump back to that one, you'll now see John has been added as an approver. And this is the kind of headache that most companies are still struggling with when it comes to AP. There's this like cascading complexity of all these different stakeholders. And we haven't even gotten to payment approvals yet. But because we're pulling complete info from the invoice, we can now auto-route these to the right people. And it's actually what makes user access super important here. Let's hop over to user access. I feel like user access is where you learn if an app actually understands how your team works, right? But look at this, remember Charlie? He's the big boss, so he's got access to all sorts of stuff. But each member of the team you can then give super granular access to. For example, if you're just approving bills, you only need the Bills tab. If you only authorize payments, you only need Payments access. Each person has a bill limit and a payment limit. That's the ceiling that they can approve or pay up to. And this is really cool. You can then actually set who that person's supervisor is. So if there's a bill or a payment in excess of that threshold, it then routes it to their supervisor. And if you think about this, it means you can design like cascading sequences where say little Jimmy can only authorize payments for the donut run, but anything above that goes to their boss, who also has a max threshold. Anything above that goes to their boss, etc. One other thing here, we saw that AP processing group earlier. They're an example of a user group, basically a pool of people authorized to do something, and whoever gets to it first can knock it out, take an action on behalf of the entire group. So, loads of power here. In fact, maybe you see this and it feels a little overwhelming. The good news is each user's view is like an inbox of their own to-dos. So the folks you're pulling into the platform, they're only presented with the stuff that matters to them. Now let's talk like internal communications, because if I pull up a bill here, I can tag members of my team. So let's take a team member here. What customer is this for? They then get a notification. Show you an example. Here it looks like this. Takes them directly into the bill and they can respond right there either on desktop or even on mobile. And you can even do the same thing for approvals, pushing an email to a team member to approve direct from the email, either on desktop or mobile, because these days, most people are not sitting shoulder to shoulder in an office talking about bill approvals. Now, last step, step number 4, very important. Because AI now helps us read and understand so much information from the bill, you can see how that now leads to like more intelligent routing for approvals, right? But the same applies to payments. Because in most businesses, it's a whole different crew of folks who then release the payment. Or oftentimes what actually happens is the owner will pay it. So the approval comes back to the owner because they're the payer of the bills, but they don't actually know anything about the bill itself. They're just the only one that can make the payment. And that's why in most cases, you want these two approval processes to be split apart, distinct workflows from each other. Let me show you an example. Once bills have been approved, they become accounts payable. Then once these guys are scheduled for payment, checky check. We set the pay from and the pay to instructions. We'll set the date of each of the payments. Let's schedule them. Now they've moved out of accounts payable and into payments. So here's a queue of payments. This is like the stack of checks on the owner's desk, right? Where they would have signed each of them. But in this case, every item has like all the information about each of the bills, about the approvals that already happened upstream, what we're paying and when, but they aren't authorized yet. It's because they have to first meet the authorization criteria that we set up in here under payment settings. So we'll hop in here, and this looks just like the bill approval settings that we walked through earlier. Under this dropdown, you've got all the same options. And I would say this is where your accounts payable process actually probably gets smarter. Because like we talked about earlier with the owner example, sometimes you kind of fudge who's allowed to pay a bill or who's allowed to approve a bill for convenience. Because that person may be the only one with the keys to the castle. But do they actually know what that bill is? Or do they have any idea if you actually have the money to pay the bills? Because we can have distinct workflows here now, we can actually build better controls. Not just about getting it done faster, but getting it done better. Okay, this payment, for example, it's waiting for authorization. Looks like Jan's the bottleneck. Jan, hurry up! I will push her a reminder email to be as helpful as I can, and push. Here's what that email she gets looks like. She can jump straight in and knock it out. It's as easy as it could possibly be, Jan. She'll work it out. We can even actually pump the brakes on payments if we don't have a W-9. Under settings here, we can flip this on. Then in any situation where we don't have a W-9 for that vendor, let's find an example warning. Here we go. A warning here that we don't have a W-9, but you'll notice if you're the big boss admin like me, you can still force payment because big bosses are annoying like that. Non-admins, they wouldn't see that option. We can then upload a W-9 if we have a copy. Is it W-9 or W-9? Or we can push a request to the vendor. They'll get an email. Here, it looks like this. They can then either upload a completed W-9, did I say W again? Or complete a fillable version. They submit that, we can get them paid. Jan's on it, no problem. Now, Last very important item. Everything I've shown you gets pushed to the QuickBooks record. This is a big annoyance for me when a tool wants to be like a new source of truth. Not the case here with Makers Hub. Everything pushes back to QuickBooks, so you don't have to have multiple sources of truth, even down to, in the memo here, like a full audit trail of who processed what. And if you kind of like zoom out, and you think about how software companies have been saying for probably a decade now, we fully automated bill pay, just because we're using like OCR, but it wasn't really that accurate. Now, like with AI and how good the extraction is, and you'll have to test this for yourself because there genuinely is a huge step up in the accuracy of what it extracts compared to anything we've had before, compared to like OCR tech. With that better extraction, you can kind of see how we're actually getting much closer to a fully automated version of AP, right? Not there yet, but getting close. And for me as an accountant, buddy, I'm not losing any sleep over that. We all got better things to do than AP. To learn more about this platform we've been checking out, Makers Hub, I'll link it down in the video description. And if you are still getting comfortable with AI, that's okay. Hey, this is a judgment-free zone. I got a video for you. Here's everything you need to know about using ChatGPT to make you more productive in your accounting work. It's a good one. It is. Click it.